Senator Mike Lee is having a horrible week after getting his ear chewed off by Tina Smith over his horrid tweets. It seems like he hasn't learned his lesson and is getting into another online beef, but this time with his own party. As the chairman for the Senate Committee on Energy and National Resources, Mike Lee is responsible for a section of text in the budget reconciliation bill that pissed off the FDR-identifying conservatives. The old school Boy Scouts and NRA kind who hunt and fish and camp, not the metrosexual frat boys who make up a shockingly large amount of MAGA. First, we'll check out how Mike Lee is trying to frame this text and how he gets called out by his own people. And then we'll check out the language of the bill itself, and I'll show you what they're trying to do to our national forests. Here's the tweet that started the discourse between the conservatives and MAGA. The user Benji Backer tweeted this: @based Mike Lee is secretly trying to sell 3 million acres of America's public land for development, and it includes some of my favorite places, specifically ones in the pictures below. Americans across the political spectrum are overwhelmingly against the sale of our beauty. Look at these pictures. Now, these places are undoubtedly beautiful, but it's actually important because Mike Lee disputes that these specific places are up for sale. Mike Lee tweeted from his official senator account this time, "None of these places depicted would be eligible for sale under our bill. The legislation specifically exempts national parks, national monuments, wilderness areas, national recreation areas, and 11 other categories of federally protected land from sales to build much-needed housing for American families." Now, this is one deceptive-ass tweet, because while you might think, oh great, look, there's wilderness areas and national monuments, those aren't on the list, well, he specifically didn't mention our national forests or BLM land. If you like outdoor activities, you might already know that BLM and USFS land is available for dispersed camping and open to recreational activities. No permits, there's light restrictions, free and open to use year-round. And that's the land that is up for sale because those lands are not, quote, federally protected. And mind you, this tweet has a community notes on it because the senator is incorrect. These areas are listed on the site for sale. And that little smoke and mirror show isn't going to work for these outdoor conservatives. They're too granola, too crunchy for the excuse given as to why they need to sell this land. Here's a post from a guy named Ryan Leachman, who's a conservative, mind you. Senate Republicans are proposing the sale of up to 3 million acres of BLM and USFS land to help pay off debt and allow for low-income housing to be built. These pictures are located in the proposed USFS land to be up for sale in Wyoming, scrubland. And look at these places. I mean, they're absolutely beautiful. There's no way you're going to be able to build a house out here in the middle of a canyon. How about this one from a guy named Roland Gunn, TN, so not exactly a progressive. "I would rather burn the Republican Party to the ground than let Mike Lee sell off national forests for condos. It's not hard to despise libertarians because they seem to only value money. Looks like the Trump coalition is starting to rip itself apart." Here's a conversation amongst Republican friends. Braxton McCoy says, "If the map I am currently looking at is correct, this bill is insane, and anyone who supports it is a traitor to this nation. We'll write more later." Zach Frazier responds 100%. Anyone who is trying to put Hope Valley and the national forest lands around Tahoe up for sale is a traitor and not looking out for the best interests of the people of this nation. And these guys are conservatives, mind you. Here's another from KC Brim. "Build much-needed housing for American families. What a crock of shit. Why not utilize the millions of vacant homes and apartments across the country while simultaneously revitalizing the crumbling cities that used to be the backbone of this country?" Oh, that's right, because it isn't actually about housing. That's right, they're trying to say that this land is going to reduce the impact of our housing crisis. There are multiple reasons why that is completely idiotic, but I'll show you when we look at the actual text what the real intention is behind this. But first, I wanted to show you guys a map of all of the land that is eligible for sale. There is an interactive map that you can zoom in and check if you want to look to make sure that your favorite camping spot, for example, isn't up for sale, but the chances are that it is. So finally, let's take a look at the actual text text here and see the specifics of what they're suggesting. Requirements. The Secretary shall select for disposal not less than 0.5% and not more than 0.75% of BLM Bureau of Land Management land, and shall dispose of all right, titlement, and interest of the United States in and at those tracts selected for disposal under this section. The Secretary of Agriculture, acting through the Chief of the Forest Service, shall select for disposal not less than 0.5 and not more than 0.75% of National Forest Systems land. So the conservatives are upset because this bill will call for the disposal of 1 to 1.5% of all federally owned land managed by BLM and USFS. That might not sound like a lot, but that represents like 2.5 to 3.5 million acres. And as of right now, every single inch of that 250 million managed by the two agencies is up for grabs. And let me show you what I mean by that. Here's the relevant section: selection process. In general, not later than 60 days after the date of enactment of this act, and every 60 days thereafter, the Secretary concerned shall publish a list of tracts of BLM land and USFS land identified by the Secretary concerned for disposal, or nominated for disposal under paragraph 2 that have been selected by the Secretary concerned for disposal. In general, the Secretary concerned shall publish a notice soliciting nominations of tracts of BLM land and USFS land for disposal by the Secretary under this section from interested parties, including states and units of local governments. So that means local municipalities can submit to buy this land, but also any interested party can submit to buy land as well. Limitations: use. A tract of covered federal land disposed under this section shall be used solely for the development of housing or to address associated community needs as defined by the Secretary concerned. Now, if I'm understanding this correctly, that means that the land sold under this provision can only be sold for the development of housing. But according to research, less than 2% of the 181 million acres managed by USFS are close enough to towns with housing needs to be practical for development, around 2.4 million acres. However, beyond proximity, safety is an important consideration. More than half, 58% of the land that's near enough, of that 2.4 million acres, faces high risk of wildfires, leaving only 1 million acres realistically available for safe development. And many of those places face other hazards such as flooding and drought. Now, this is specifically for USFS land, but I'm guessing there's a similar amount for BLM land, maybe even less since most of that is in the desert. Which means that of all of this land that is eligible, only a few parcels are actually realistically able to be developed, which means that land is going to be sold to billionaires and luxury housing developments in places like this, where obviously the value comes from their beautiful, beautiful views. Now, if you don't want these national treasures to be sold off to the highest bidder, contact your senators and tell them to reject Mike Lee's proposal. And remember, it's not just about housing development either. There's land earmarked for sale to oil and gas companies, to logging companies, to mining companies. And if you want to stay informed on the kind of stuff that MAGA doesn't want you to know, then you can subscribe to Really American and drop a blue heart below. I'm Tony Hinderman with Really American, and I'll catch you next time.